You're listening to a Bored to Death Mandocast, talking all things Star Wars in easily digestible chunks.
Hello again, ladies and gentlemen, and other assorted gender assignations. Welcome back to the Bored to Death Mandocast. Yes, the Mandocast is now covering all things Star Wars, not just the Mandalorian. I am Jay, being joined by
Chris,
and we are here to begin a weekly binge of Star Wars: The Bad Batch.
Yes, where this apparently takes place immediately after the Clone Wars ended.
Episode 1 of Bad Batch, titled Aftermath. Hour and 14 minutes long. So hey, we're getting like feature length sort of stuff here.
It's a good way to start a series off.
Description just reads: the clones of the Bad Batch find themselves in a changing galaxy after the Clone Wars. So yeah, I guess we're going to find out what happened with the Bad Batch in the aftermath of Order 66.
I'm honestly thinking that they hadn't gone into hiding like some of the clones did, like the ones that we see in Rebels. Because I still remember that episode of Rebels where those particular clones were essentially captured by the Imperials, and we were told, "Oh, we can reinstate you." And the only thing that the clones did was laugh afterwards, because they don't like the stormtroopers at all.
Yeah, because they're just sort of like, you guys can't shoot.
So I imagine that the Bad Batch is probably the same way. It's like, oh, yeah, the stormtroopers ain't shit.
Yeah. I really hope we get to see some of that trash talking happening in here. So, if you're not aware of who the Bad Batch are, they were introduced in the last season of Clone Wars. They are a special group of sort of experimental clones with additional abilities. We had Hunter, who has like extra sort of tracking abilities. I think they said there was something like he sort of can read like the electrical field sort of a planet, and he can use that to track his prey or whatever. We have Wrecker, the heavy weapons guy. I may be getting some of these names wrong. I'm just basing this off of the trailer, and it's been a few days since I last watched it. Specs, who's like their
the brainy techie guy. He's the Donatello of the group.
He's the Donatello of the group. We have Echo, who was the one that they rescued in the Bad Batch arc in the last season of Clone Wars. A clone who was captured by the Separatists. They turned him into a cyborg and were using the cybernetic implants to try to probe his mind for tactical data and codes and whatnot. But now he has the ability to essentially hack into computer systems with the droid arm that they gave him. It's literally like the same sort of thing that R2-D2 uses to hack computers.
Yes, but leaves him vulnerable at the same time.
Yes. There's the sniper, whose name I can't remember. He's the one who has like a specialized trooper helmet that I think interfaces with like the scope on his rifle or whatever,
which is always cool to have.
Can't remember if there are any others, but those are the ones. Those are the main ones that we're really kind of focusing on. And Echo, after he got rescued, basically the Bad Batch offered him a position in their unit, and he was like, Sure. Because as far as the rest of the clones were concerned, he was dead.
So, if anything, this is probably more like a Black Ops team. Almost.
Well,
They're the ones who don't mind getting their hands dirty.
Yep. Well, that's sort of the clones in a nutshell. The clones have always sort of been meant to be disposable. That's how the Republic kind of viewed them. Wasn't right, but that's how they viewed them.
Yeah, but the Bad Batch kind of like do their own thing.
Yeah.
Which is the reason why the clone that was assigned to essentially lead them in their debut episode in Clone Wars was kind of frustrated with them because they were essentially doing their own thing.
Wasn't that Cody or
I think it
Rex?
was. I think it was Rex. No, it was Rex.
Yeah, because Rex, while he's fully capable of going off book, he's one of those guys that kind of prefers things do happen in a more predictable manner, and there's nothing predictable about the Bad Batch. But yeah, so this episode, given the length, was probably meant to be a sort of like pilot episode. As most pilot episodes tend to be longer than the standard length.
Yeah, plus I know that a lot of times when something proves to be popular enough, these companies tend to go ahead and say, oh, well, this proved really popular with the fans, let's go ahead and make a spin-off. Like, when Punisher made his debut in Season 2 of Daredevil, Punisher was not going to have his own series until the fans said, give him his own series. So they were like, okay, we'll do it.
It's the fucking Punisher. I mean, come on. But, yeah, I still really kind of wish that Season 2 had brought in, like, Barracuda. Because Barracuda would have been an awesome villain for Punisher to take on. But, hey, we'll... Maybe in the future, now that Disney's just sort of like, we're going to start taking that stuff back. Maybe. Who knows? Finding if they could find some way to incorporate the Netflix MCU stuff, even if it's just a case of reboot it in a way, but still use the same actors. Like Charlie Cox must be Daredevil. But at any rate. But with the length, I imagine we're also going to get, like... I'm guessing we're going to start with, like, a sort of cold open, or here's what who the Bad Batch are, and here's what they do, kind of thing.
So you think it's going to start the same way the Clone Wars episodes did?
Sort of. Because with a series like this, you do have to assume that the people tuning in to watch it watched the preceding series. You do still have to sort of give enough context about who the characters are. You can't just expect the fans to immediately, or the viewers to immediately know who they are.
That's what I usually tell people who have never seen the Clone Wars, because it could be, like some people have said, oh, it's a cartoon, it's meant for kids. I'm like, no, it's not. Mm-hmm. You can still watch it. I'll watch it, love it. If you love war stories, definitely check it out.
If you assume that anything animated is for kids, then you are very wrong, and I will give one mention of a series that you and I will be covering again soon. Castlevania.
I thought
that is definitely not for kids.
I thought you were also going to say Invincible.
That's another one. I do need to get in on that. I know I think it's wrapped up season 1, and I know they've already confirmed at least season 2.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just sort of like, if you assume that just because it's animated that it's going to be all cutesy and sunshine and lollipops because you were raised on Disney fare from like the 80s or early 90s, oh boy, have I got some news for you. Cartoons have changed, my friend.
Oh yeah.
But yes, so Aftermath, episode 1 of Bad Batch. Anything you are specifically expecting in the episode or in the series?
I'm expecting for the Bad Batch to show the Imperials why the clones were better than kidnapping kids and turning them into stormtroopers.
Well, that's how the First Order did things, at least. I don't know if that's how the Empire necessarily did
they may have done the same thing. I don't think that was ever fully explored, but I think I read somewhere that that's what they did.
And then again, we also know that stormtroopers, I think, are just sort of like Imperial Navy, on the ships and space and everything. Because we've seen Imperial ground troops also don't wear the same armor and everything. You remember in Solo.
Yeah.
He wasn't wearing his stormtrooper's uniform.
No, that was the ground infantry. Just
as disposable as the stormtroopers.
What was it? Woody Harrelson was obviously wearing the stolen armor from a captain that had a couple holes in it, and that's when Solo noticed it and said, so either you heal really good, or you stole that.
Yeah. But yeah. For my part, I'm wondering, because we know that this is going to cover the... because based solely on the description, Clone Wars are over, the Republic has become the Empire. And we're probably going to see a lot of those sort of quote-unquote policy changes starting to come into play.
And obviously they're going to disagree with it.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was what I picked up from the trailers. It's just sort of like the Bad Batches are like, yeah, no, this isn't what we were made for. And not what they signed up for, because, well, they never signed anything. But yeah, I think Tarkin is supposed to be a major character in this. Wasn't he in the trailer?
I think he was in the trailer because I swear
it's been like a week or so since
I swear I saw him in it, and he would probably be a really good villain for this show.
Mm-hmm. But I still am hoping that the Star Wars, like TV series like these and The Mandalorian is still going to have Thrawn as sort of like the greater scope villain of the franchise as a whole, like how Thanos was sort of the greater scope villain in the MCU through Phase 3.
Yeah.
We don't, like with Phase 4, we don't know who the greater scope villain is going to be there.
It better be Kang the Conqueror.
Galactus.
No, I'm saying Kang the Conqueror because of the time travel thing. That's
a good point. Maybe that's where things are going to come into play with Loki. But Thrawn has the potential to be a great villain for the Star Wars franchise as a whole, especially if, like you've been saying, that they are going to try to sort of make the sequel trilogy semi-non-canon.
Well, I was hearing about how Jon Favreau is actually re-editing The Rise of Skywalker because Kathleen Kennedy, when she ordered the reshoots for that film, she took out a lot of character development that was meant for like Ben Solo and a bunch of other characters, and I think she wanted to take the character development stuff out and replace it with more action scenes in it. Like more, that looks so badass type of scenes.
Yeah.
So John is supposedly going into the studio to re-edit the entire film to re-add those scenes.
# release the Favreau cut. But yeah.
Even though he was not the director of the film.
But if Thrawn is going to be in this, I imagine he's not going to show up in episode 1. He'll be in later episodes. Probably just to request a status update from Tarkin on something.
If he does show up, he's probably going to be on like a monitor or something like the
holographic thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we know that Thrawn is still going to be alive in this time period. Well, we suspect he's still alive by the time the Mandalorian rolls around, based solely on Ahsoka Tano looking for him.
Yeah.
But we don't know anything about what his current status is.
But we also never saw him die in Rebels.
Right. But this is well before then, so we've got plenty of time to see, plenty of timeline for him to still be able to be up to all sorts of nefarious things. Like an Imperial intelligence officer would be.
Well, plus
ISB, that's what it was.
Plus, I don't know if they ever specified when he joined the Imperial Navy, because I know that when in the Imperials, it's all technically human characters. Mm-hmm. Droids are basically just used for maintenance work and stuff like that.
They don't have the tactical droids like the Separatists did.
Yeah, they don't use aliens. Thrawn, as far as I know, is the only non-human in the Imperial Army.
Certainly the only one to have reached such a high rank.
Well, if you know all those good tactics that he does, if he's able to say, okay, well, here's the target, here's everything surrounding the target, we need to get through this to get to this target area. Or whatever.
And I could see Thrawn also being the kind of person who, or at least I could see the Empire, and especially Imperial officers, being the kind of persons to, when they see somebody with some brilliant strategy and tactic plannings like that, would try to take credit for it. And when Thrawn realizes that they are trying to take all the credit for his tactics, to then provide to provide the data they're looking for, but not necessarily the context. And without that context, it screws things up. So it's the victory's not going to be, they're not going to die from their failure, but it's not going to be a success. I could see him sabotaging his officers when they try to take credit for his work, and then he then steps in and be like, actually, this is the data that I provided. He screwed it up. And then, all right, we'll give you a chance. And then he just sort of moves up the ranks that way. I forget how in the Legends continuity it was specified how he got so good, how he got so highly placed. But regardless, despite the fact that he was so good, the fact that he was non-human is why he had been assigned out to the unknown regions and didn't return until after the second Death Star was destroyed.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand the reason why he would probably end up going hiding.
It wasn't so much in hiding as it was like the Empire was just sort of like, you're good, so go pacify the unknown regions for us. So, but really it was just sort of like, you're embarrassing us by being so good and being not human. Go over there where we don't have to look at you.
And then he comes back and says, I conquered everything.
What do you mean that you let the Empire fall while I was gone?
And then he realizes, I could take over now.
Well, now I don't have to worry about all of this. Oh, these Imperial warlords don't want to go along with my plans. Okay, we'll see how well that works out for you. I'll be over here if you need me. And lo and behold, they needed him. But anyway, let's get into the Bad Batch because we're just starting to ramble now. All right, so we'll be back after episode 1.
Hey, while we're watching this episode, you should go ahead and toss us a like and subscribe. If you want to reach out, do it via our social media on Facebook or Twitter at BTD_Bingecast. The Bored to Death Clan is part of the CKCC Radio podcast tribe, including Jay Bunny's Music Hub, the Race Nerd Podcast, Real Paranormal Talk, Ranking Tracks, Motivational Moves, Park Hopper 101, and The Nerd Table. Imperial credits may not be worth much, but remember to support CKCC Radio on Patreon. I have spoken.
And we're back. Quite a long intro, but it was entirely necessary to set up the basic arc of the show.
Yeah, especially with everything that developed in just this one episode and the characters that we got to see.
Exactly. Well, like I predicted, we got like a pseudo cold open where we got introduced to who the Bad Batch are and what they can do. They were specifically on, I don't catch the name of the planet, but it was in the closing moments of the Clone Wars. It was specified that Obi-Wan Kenobi had gone after General Grievous.
If you've seen episode 3, you know the scene.
Yeah, if you've seen Revenge of the Sith, you know the scene. But this one was focusing on a particular Jedi Master, again, whose name I didn't...
they said the name, but it's one of those, like...
You'd have to be really good at knowing having like a encyclopedic knowledge of everything. But she's leading the clone troops and requests some reinforcements to deal with the droid army marching on them. And that's when her Padawan turns back up. A young Padawan by the name of Caleb Dune.
Yes, who is being voiced once again by Freddie Prinze Jr., although I think he changed the pitch of his voice a little slightly to sound obviously younger, which it's...
by the way, if you don't know who Caleb Dune is, you would know him better as Kanan from Star Wars Rebels.
Yes, so you probably know his backstory because he does explain it a little bit in Clone Wars, but doesn't really go into too much detail.
At any rate, Caleb turns back up with Clone Force 99, aka the Bad Batch, in tow, and we get to see them basically wreck shop on a bunch of the droids. And I got a couple of the names. I got one of the names wrong. It's not Specs, it's Tech, but I call him Specs because he wears glasses.
Yeah, I mean that's how you would.
The sniper's name is Crosshair. I couldn't remember what his name was, but there you go, Crosshair. But after they've dealt with those forces, the Jedi Master sends Clone Force 99 ahead with Caleb to go deal with the rest of the droid army. But then, while she's holding back with the others, we see her clone captain suddenly lift a hand to his helmet, and as soon as I saw that happening, I was like, "Oh no, this is the moment." And sure enough, we get to
Order 66.
Order 66, and they gun her down, and Caleb turns around to see this happening, and Clone Force 99 turns around as well and to see it happening, but they're just as confused as he is. They're not responding to the execute Order 66 command.
Where they were just like, "Did you pick that up? Yeah, what does that mean?"
Yeah. The only one who shows some sign of responding to the order is Crosshair. Because when Hunter goes chasing after Caleb, who runs off into the forest to get away, Crosshair hangs back and just goes, "Good soldiers follow orders," which is something that we heard in season 6 of the Clone Wars, when Fives was trying to find out what had happened to his friend, another clone trooper by the name of called Tup. Tup had basically something had gone wrong with his inhibitor chip and caused him to basically execute Order 66 early,
way too early. I remember that episode.
It was a series of episodes actually, but.
Well, that's how the Clone Wars show usually went.
But Tup's degeneration into following that order, he kept repeating that line over and over until he finally snapped. It was like, "Good soldiers follow orders." And so as soon as I heard that, I was like, "Ooh, that's not good. That is not good." Well, Hunter does manage to track down Caleb, but he's not able to talk him into basically escaping with them or standing down.
It's like, "Look, kid, we're your friends here." Meanwhile, Crosshairs is trying to follow that order. At one point in time, Caleb's hiding in a tree. He shoots the branch that he's on, and he falls down. Yeah. And does the Obi-Wan Kenobi take the robe off and then ignite the lightsaber a bit.
Yep.
And Crosshairs tries shooting at him. Doesn't work, and so he has to pull out his short-range weapon. Still doesn't work because the kid just slices it.
Yep. But Caleb eventually, they're at the edge of a cliff over a waterfall, and Caleb just uses the Force, jumps to the other side of the waterfall, and then just runs off into the forest. And Crosshair catches up to him at this point, and it's just sort of like, "What happened?" And he's like, "Kid, I shot him in the air, and the kid fell." And he walks off, but Crosshair just lowers his little scouter and scans the area. He calls him on it later. It's like when you shoot somebody, when somebody falls, you look down, not across. Hunter's tried to pass it off as, "Yeah, well, I don't like to watch."
I mean, there's a difference between shooting a droid and shooting a living being.
True. Not really much of a difference to Crosshair, you could tell, but following that, they return to Kamino, which is, of course, where all the clone troopers are made. And, well, that's when they are pulled into a general assembly of all the clone troopers, as we see Emperor Palpatine's first address to the galaxy.
Which is the one that we hear in Episode 3, and this is supposed to be after his battle with Mace Windu, where Mace, quote-unquote, scarred him.
Well, he kind of reflected the Force lightning back on him, which is what caused that, but yes. Yeah. Basically, if you've seen Revenge of the Sith, you've seen the speech. And all around them, the regulation clones, or the regs, as
the Bad Batch calls them,
are all cheering about all of this. But then we find out that, sure enough, Admiral Tarkin has been sent to Kamino to evaluate the clone troopers to determine whether or not the Empire is going to honor the contract that the Republic had signed.
And he's like, "Well, the Republic ain't here no more."
Yeah, your contract was with the Republic, which no longer exists. And I'm just like, that's a dirty trick, but yeah, that is kind of where a lot of that legal stuff sort of comes in. But also, in the midst of all this, we're introduced to a young girl called Omega, who sort of stands out on Kamino in that she's not like one of the clone troopers. She's not one of the Kaminoans. It's like, who is this girl? What is she doing here? And as the episode progressed and her accent became a lot more pronounced, I'm just sort of like thinking to myself, is it a case of she's picked up the accent because she's around all these clone troopers who all basically sound the same and have that accent? Or is there something else going on with her? And later in the episode, we got when Tarkin was inquiring about the Bad Batch, and it's explained that they were...
So we're like...
Well, yeah.
Echo's not one of them because he started off as a regular clone. It's just that he was enhanced. Oh yeah, that's another thing. When they were talking about the whole Order 66 thing, and they're like, oh, well, how come Echo wasn't affected by it? He was a regular clone. They said, well, probably because he was enhanced with all these droid bits that are on him.
As Tech put it, you're more machine now than man. But yes, it's sort of it's explained that the inhibitor chips in the Bad Batch don't work the way they should because of the changes in their cranial activity or whatever, because of the experiments that were the mutations.
Yeah, each member of the Bad Batch has a specific skill. Like Crosshair is obviously the sniper; he's really good at that.
An exceptional shot.
Yes. Who's the Tech one again?
Tech has enhanced intelligence.
Yeah. So, every
Hunter has enhanced senses.
Yeah, so all of them have some sort of special ability. That's the reason why they're... Well, like that little medical droid said to them, oh, I have unfortunate news. Every single one of you is defective. I will leave you here to react to the bad news.
as they're just sort of looking at each other, just sort of like, yeah, we know this.
It's literally a no shit moment.
Yeah. But as part of before the whole questions about the Bad Batch were brought up, Tarkin had seen the five of them get into a fight in the mess hall with a bunch of the regs, because one little group of regs called them the rejects, the Sad Batch, and I'm just thinking, you do know that they can basically kick more ass than all of you combined, and they proceed to prove it.
They pretty much wiped the floor with every single clone trooper in there.
Yep. But Tarkin had been watching this from like a catwalk overhead kind of thing, and then arranged a combat drill for them. And when the Bad Batch basically proved, yeah, we can handle this, he's like, switch to live fire. And so then he sent out like prototype dark troopers, it almost seemed like. Big droids that have a very similar shape, although you compared them more to...
I looked at them, I was like, why do they remind me of Cylons? They just don't have the eye.
They don't have the little sweeping eye, red eye thing going, but yeah. And when the Bad Batch overcame that as well, Tarkin just sort of turned and left, but that's when he started asking about who they were, what they were. And when it was mentioned that there were 5 enhanced clones remaining, 5 members of the Bad Batch, but I immediately was like, wait, no, wait. There's only 4 enhanced troopers in the Bad Batch because of Echo. He was just turned into a cyborg later.
And then he joined up with the Bad Batch.
And so I immediately looked at you, Chris, and I was like, it's Omega. Omega's is one of them. And we got confirmation of that later in the episode also. We don't know what's different about her, but we'll get to that later. And Tarkin then gives the Bad Batch another little test to, supposedly to further determine if the clone troopers are viable going forward as opposed to conscripts. And he sends them off to can't remember the name of the planet.
Another one of the swamp planets.
Yes, but it's one that we have been to before.
During the Clone Wars.
During the Clone Wars. I think it's called Ondura or something like that. Tarkin sends them there saying that there's a group of insurgents that he wants eliminated. So the Bad Batch goes there. Omega tries to warn them not to go. Says that she doesn't trust Tarkin, but they go off to get there, and when they come across the insurgent camp, they're surprised because they were expecting it to be like separatist holdouts, which is sort of what Tarkin had implied in what he had told them. But then they realize there are children down there, and there's an old woman. These aren't droids. What's going on? Crosshair just has his sights trained on like a little old granny sitting there leaning on her cane, and he's just like, just give the order. And I'm like, fuck, dude. But Hunter's just like, no, I don't like this. Something's not right about this. And that's when the insurgents show up with guns trained on them. They surrender long enough to be brought to the camp, where we find out that these insurgents are being led by Saw Gerrera.
And they obviously had to have the voice actor do an impersonation of
Forrest
Whitaker.
Well,
like a younger sounding Forrest Whitaker.
Well, I think it was probably just the same voice actor that they used in Clone Wars for him, and the same voice, who was the same voice actor who provided the voice for him in Rebels.
It probably was him. I need to look that up.
But Saw Gerrera basically is just sort of like, we're not going along with what the Empire wants us to do. That's not what we're here for. Basically, straight up calling the Empire out for being up to some bad shit, and basically puts it in the Bad Batch's hand. It's like, you can either follow your orders, or you can start asking some questions, sort of thing. He gives Hunter his gun back, showing a hell of a lot of trust, in my opinion. But Hunter basically is just sort of like decides to turn and leave as Saw Gerrera and his partisans all start to leave. Well, partisans and refugees, I should say instead. But as they're leaving, Hunter sort of pauses and glances up into the trees, and he's just like, he could tell something was there. And the something turns out to be a probe droid. And like the ones that we saw at the beginning of Empire Strikes Back, and that we have seen in various other media. We're going to pause briefly because there's about to be a little bit of noise. Okay, resuming. Chris had a sudden coughing fit there. Allergies, man. We'll just leave it at that. As they return to the ship, Crosshair's finally calling out Hunter about disobeying orders, like he did on Kala, which is where that was the name of the planet where they
came across Janin.
Mm-hmm.
Kanan. Sorry, Kanan Jarrus. I got the letters.
Got the letters flipped.
But the thing is that the thing that was trailing them was a Imperial probe droid.
Yes.
Which, to be honest with you, I remember the first time I saw that, when I saw one of those when I was a kid, when I first watched Empire Strikes Back. I'll openly admit, the way it was designed kind of creeped me out a little bit because of the arms.
Oh yeah, I think that was the entire goal, was to make them seem frightening.
But then you kind of like realize that the Empire's flaw, like slight design flaw, was the color, by putting it on a planet with snow and it's black.
It's in the Empire's defense, they just deployed hundreds, if not thousands, of those things across the Outer Rim trying to find rebel bases. They had no way of knowing what planet they were going to necessarily land on. Trying to custom design every single probe droid to camouflage itself on every single planet would have been completely unfeasible and expensive. And we've already seen from this episode that the Empire is looking to cut costs. But so Crosshair's calling out Hunter. It looks like the two of them are about to go at it, and then Hunter draws his gun and shoots and takes out the probe droid. And I'm just, I'm looking at it like, you're already too late. It's already been broadcasting this stuff back to Tarkin. You know that they have. And they even know, as soon as they see it, that it was Tarkin spying on them. And that's when they realize, we're going to be in trouble when we get back. Maybe we shouldn't go back. And that's when Tech drops the bomb on them that, yes, Omega was an enhanced clone. Is an enhanced clone. And Wrecker, being the dumbass that he is, he's strong and he likes blowing things up, but he's not the brightest. Wrecker is just like completely shocked by this revelation. And Hunter makes the decision, well, we can't leave her there. She's one of us. And so they decide to go back to Camino to try to rescue her. And they get caught like as soon as they step into the hangar.
Yeah. As soon as they get caught, they get brought to a holding cell
where Omega is already imprisoned.
And Tech goes, hey, so this place was built before the Clone Wars. This place was not meant to have a brig or anything.
This was retrofitted to be a brig.
So technically, this isn't supposed to be able to hold us.
Or rather, it's not meant to hold people with enhanced abilities. And they immediately all turn to Wrecker. We should note at this point, though, I think this was when this was after they pulled Crosshair out of there.
Yeah.
But while they were all there in the cell, Omega is, she's happy to see them, there's clearly some tension going on within the Bad Batch, mostly between Hunter and Crosshair, because Crosshair is blaming Hunter for getting them into this mess, and she sits down with Crosshair as he's sort of brooding there in the corner, and she's
mimicking him.
Well, no, she starts mimicking Hunter later, but she's empathizing with Crosshair, that she can tell he's angry, and it's just like, don't do what you're about to do, is what she says to him, something along those lines.
Yeah.
And he just sort of gives her this somewhat puzzled look, but then the other clones turn up. They take Crosshair off to be examined, where basically I think it was Nala Su was like the main or no, it wasn't them. Well, it was one of the Kaminoans that I think we saw in one of the movies, overseeing the examination, and it's like the inhibitor chip is functioning in his brain, but it's not working completely. We saw that he was like holding the side of his head where the chip is, while he was brooding in the cell, and Tarkin asks, can the effects of the chip be enhanced?
We're like, yeah, sure.
And he's like, do it. And so then they basically just zap his brain.
They were just sitting there just shocking the damn chip in his brain.
And as we see like a readout start, with like a red bar growing longer. It's just sort of like, oh, that's not good. But then we cut back to the cell where Tech basically is like, we could break out of here, or rather, Wrecker could. And then it's just a case of distract the guards, block their line of sight. Wrecker, punch the wall really hard right here.
It's like, where do I punch? And then Tech is just like feeling the wall. He knocks on one part where he can hear here, where it's hollow. He goes, hit right here.
Bam!
And so they're like, all right, form a wall. So they all form a wall to block him. He punches it, sits it back down, and he goes, it didn't do anything.
Hit it harder.
Hit it harder. Okay.
Bam!
Boom!
And it knocks a panel loose enough that they are able to pry it open. And Wrecker's like, I'm never going to fit through there. And Tech's just like, I wasn't thinking about you. And Omega immediately volunteers to go through it, and is just basically told, get to the console, flip the lever to take the force field down. But then the guards notice that something's going on, and yada yada yada. Omega falls out of the ceiling on top of them, manages to get to the lever, and then the regs get knocked out, and they quickly hurry off to the hangar to get their stuff and get back to their ship. But when they get there, Oh, and throughout all this, as you had mentioned, we saw that Omega was sort of like mimicking a lot of Hunter's movements, like the way he was sitting, like with his head propped up on his hand. She was imitating that. When he noticed her, he sort of straightened up and lowered his hand, and she did the exact same thing. When they were sneaking through the halls to get to the hangar, he came up to a corner, he stopped and did the whole like raise the fist, hand signal thing, and she's right behind him doing the exact same thing. But when they get to the hangar and they're all like grabbing their equipment, she seems to realize that the regs are approaching before the doors open, and because Hunter had said we got to go find Crosshair, and she just turns, looks towards another door, and she's like, "You're not going to have to look far." And then the doors open to admit these regs with Crosshair bringing up the rear.
And we have the ominous music from the last season of Clone Wars playing too.
Mm-hmm. He's got himself some new armor, and new helmets. Not it's still a modified one, but it's not the same one that he'd been wearing. And yeah, there's a standoff. There's then stuff starts shooting. Well, yada yada yada. They do manage to get out of there, but Wrecker does get tagged. He's ultimately fine, but he gets knocked down from it.
He gets shot in the shoulder.
Mm-hmm. And in the closing moments, as they're trying to get Wrecker up the ramp onto the ship, Crosshair is lining up his shot, and Omega grabs a blaster, shoots once, hits Crosshair's rifle in the scope, and knocks it out of his hand. And the Bad Batch is sort of surprised by this, but they get onto the ship. And as they're powering it up, one of the regs calls for the hangar door to be shut, but it stops before it's barely even moved. And then we see this one Kaminoan that Omega had been sort of tailing around and been sort of working for on Kamino. We saw that she had been tapping like a tablet and preventing the hangar from closing. Bad Batch escapes, and that Kaminoan goes back to the Prime Minister, and it's just sort of they all got away along with Omega. And he's like, "That's good. Until we know more about what the Empire is up to, that's
all that we can do.
That's all that we can do." So there's clearly something even more special about Omega, but towards the end, Hunter, is talking with her. It's like, "That was a pretty good shot. Where'd you learn how to do that?" She's like, "I just did it. It was the first time I ever fired a blaster."
Yeah, what did you say it reminded you of?
For a moment, well, it's like when I saw her looking at the blaster, I thought we were going to get a River Song moment from Firefly. There was an episode where they're storming Niska's
his little
citadel, and I think it was Kaylee was sort of pinned down by some of Niska's thugs, and River picks up a gun, looks out into the hangar, and then I forget what exactly she says, but she turns her head and without looking fires a bunch of times, and every single shot is a lethal shot and takes out everyone. And then that's when she turns back to Kaylee and goes, "No power in the verse can stop me," because she thought they were still sort of playing in her weird little world.
Yeah,
and it sort of terrified Kaylee because she just saw kooky little River kill 3 men without even looking. But I thought we were going to get that, and still something like it, but it wasn't a case of her not even looking. But this goes back to my theory when it was specified she was an enhanced trooper. I think she's force sensitive.
She could be, because I was kind of thinking of the kid at the end of The Last Jedi, the one who was looking up and he could see the ship going to faster than light.
Mm-hmm. And then he was holding a little broom.
No, he wasn't holding the broom. He reached his hand out and the broom went to him.
Did it?
Yes, it did. And then he held it up like it was a lightsaber.
Yeah, I remember him holding the broom up. I thought it was in his hand.
No, if you go back and rewatch that scene, yes, I know Last Jedi is not a great film, but I like this scene in the movie where the kid walks out, reaches his hand out, and the lights and the broom comes to his hand.
Huh. I know. Yeah, the sequel trilogy had its flaws. I didn't think the Last Jedi at the time was that bad. I recognized that it had some serious flaws, but. Really, though, it was the Rise of Skywalker that sort of ruined everything to me. That's my own personal opinion. I appreciate that's not the common opinion among a lot of Star Wars fans, but at any rate, but at the end of after this whole discussion with Omega, the Bad Batch is like, so what are we going to do? We gotta, and Hunter's like, my original plan was just to lay low somewhere. Let the heat die down, but with Crosshair gunning for us, that's not an option. So, but then he gets an idea. It's like, he says, chart a course for J19. And I looked this up before we started recording, but J19 refers to a particular sector where it was back in Clone Wars series where there was a clone trooper that had defected, or rather deserted, and had basically become a farmer on this temperate world somewhere. And I forget the character's name, but as soon as when I looked it up and it mentioned a clone that had become a farmer, I was like, oh, I remember that episode now. But
that was a weird episode too.
It was, but it was like the first case that you saw where clones could basically make their own decisions that wasn't sort of programmed into them. And so they're clearly going to him for some help, maybe even to try to get some answers about what may be going on. But it was an interesting first episode. It set a lot of things in motion. Very curious to see if I'm right about Omega being a Force-sensitive clone or something. Curious. I'm wondering whether it was a case of they did more experiments with the genetic code and just
that's what I'm thinking. So
did a gender flip or something.
Well, I mean,
or
in the case,
or did they combine somebody else's DNA into her?
Well, I mean, in terms of the whole gender thing, it's kind of like you got to think back to Jurassic Park, where they said they made all of the dinosaurs female. All they had to do was dick around with the chromosomes, but they said they also mixed frog DNA in it. And then
there are some species of frog that in a monogender culture, some of them will spontaneously flip genders so that the species can sort of keep propagating.
Yeah, believe it or not, clownfish are the same way. So yeah, Finding Nemo just got real dark for some of y'all. But
God damn it.
But yeah, so the whole dicking around with the chromosomes thing, I imagine that they're able to do that. So it's we could have created more female clones if they wanted to. So, but they chose not to. Instead, they were all just male.
Well, it's probably easier to just make. It's probably cheaper. What?
Pause it.
Okay, we're gonna pause for a second. We're back. Chris just wanted to show me a clip from The Last Jedi where, yes, indeed, the kid did move the broom. Anyway.
I had to prove him right. Or I had to prove myself right on that one.
Yeah. So, anyway. With the chromosome thing, it's just... I think it's probably just easier for them to just make them all with one gender. Whether with their experiments with mutating the DNA to try to create enhanced clones caused some to be gender flipped, or whether they combined some other DNA in there that just manifested in the clone that was produced as a female.
Well, we know the frog alien species.
Yes, but while we don't know specifically what flavor of humanity Jango Fett was, if she is derived from Jango's DNA.
It's probably a combination of Jango plus maybe a Jedi.
Maybe.
I mean, I know Obi-Wan Kenobi was there So who knows what happened?
Well, there were a number of other Jedi that were stationed on Camino over the
there was Sifo Dyas was one of them. So who knows?
There's any we don't know is what it comes down to.
It'll probably be revealed as the show goes on.
Agreed. There's no way you introduce a character like that, state that she's an enhanced clone, and not eventually reveal whatever her ability is. But that's one of those things you keep the audience sort of strung along for a few episodes until you give the big reveal. Hopefully you don't go to season 2 of Bad Batch where it's revealed that her name is actually like Grogu or something. I mean, we all love Baby Yoda, but we're all still going to call him Baby Yoda even if we do know his name. It's just that's.
Yeah, but I can't call him that at work because one of my managers hasn't seen season 2 yet.
So you have to keep calling him Baby Yoda?
Yeah.
Well, that's fine, because Baby Yoda is his name. I don't care what his name actually is. He's Baby Yoda.
But
just know that Luke is probably thinking of him as Baby Yoda in his head, too.
Probably. But I saw some of the behind-the-scenes stuff of them, still, playing with the... Or, who was it? I think it was Robert Rodriguez who was sitting there playing with the damn... the animatronic. Acting like it was a real child.
Yeah. But interesting first episode. Keep wondering what other characters that we know, or places that we know are going to pop up again.
How much do you think? Do you think they're going to end up on Tatooine at some point?
I don't know. I feel like Tatooine is only there for when the Jedi are involved somehow.
Either Tatooine or Jeddah. The planet from
Jeddah, I could see them possibly ending up on, but Tatooine, I don't think so. I think Tatooine is going to factor into things more when the Obi-Wan series, when the Kenobi series comes along.
Whenever that is.
Well, they're working on it, but that's going to be where Tatooine is going to be more of a thing. That and Book of Boba Fett, obviously.
Yeah, but that's a spin-off of Mandalorian.
Yeah, but that's decades later. Is it going to pop up here in the Bad Batch? Who knows? I would like to see Hondo make another appearance.
I could see him helping the clones out. I could see him helping the
more a case of you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours kind of thing. Like they need something from him, and he's like, "Well, if I can help you, but you have to do a favor for me." In that typical Hondo way.
Yes, we are not going to try to impersonate Jim Cummings.
Because but Hondo is just one of those characters. I really want him to come back.
Me too. I was glad that he came back for Rebels.
What if he's in Book of Boba Fett?
He's going to be a lot older, but sure.
Oh, come on, I mean...
But they're going to have to get Jim Cummings in to dub over whoever the actor is.
Unless you just get Jim Cummings to play the character.
He's going to have to shave a lot.
I mean, yeah, but it's just... They're not shy of using the voice actor in the live-action role.
No.
We saw that with Starbuck, for crying out loud.
Yes, we did.
She was playing. She played Bo-Katan in the Mandalorian. That's another thing in the little Star Wars opening.
Marvel,
like the Marvel Studios kind of thing, where it shows like a bunch of like droid heads and helmets and stuff with the lights flickering over them. So we saw Bo-Katan's helmet in there. And I swear it wasn't there during Mandalorian. So that's another one of those things that we're going to have to go back and look at later. But yeah, Bad Batch is definitely one that we're going to keep checking out.
When's the next episode? Friday?
Friday.
Okay.
We're recording this on a Wednesday. The series dropped on May the 4th, but you were working that day. I wasn't going to watch it without you, so that we would both have a fresh perspective on this. So we'll be doing episode 2 come Friday, maybe Saturday, depending on not Saturday, because there's going to be too many other things on my plate for Saturday. But yes, we will keep doing this. If you have not watched any of Clone Wars and you want to try to figure out what's going on before jumping into the Bad Batch, just watch the last season of Clone Wars, because the first 4 episodes of the final season introduce us to the Bad Batch. And the rest of the series, okay, we wrap up the whole arc with Maul on Mandalore, but then we have the Order 66 arc where everything goes sideways, and so the last season of Clone Wars is basically all you need to watch in order to know what's going on here.
It also helps if you've seen Rebels.
It does help, not immediately necessary. Just gives you, you'll recognize if you watch through Rebels all the way, then you'll recognize the name Caleb when he turns up.
It's not in there. Bo-Katan's helmet was not in there. I just watched the intro for season 2 of Mandalorian.
Okay, so I was right.
Yeah,
I was right. But yeah, Caleb Dune. When the name got dropped, I was like, "Isn't that?"
Like I sat there.
We were both like,
"No." I was like, I looked at it, my jaw dropped, and I looked over at you, like, "Do you know who that is?"
And it was as soon as like Caleb, I was like, "Isn't that?" And then when I heard him speak again, I heard Freddie Prinze Jr.'s voice. I was like, "That is that's Kanan." So yeah. Definitely one to check out if you're a Star Wars fan.
I like how now they're explaining more of the universe.
Mm-hmm. They can do so much more world building
than just with movies.
In a series like this, because you can't put that world building into a 2-hour movie. It's just you can't if you're still going to move the plot along and keep the audience engaged. There are ways you can world build without going into too much depth with it. The John Wick movies are a good example. The first 2 especially do world building without having to have an audience surrogate in there to explain what all this stuff that's going on is or means. Like the whole gold coins that are used as payment in the underworld that John Wick moves in.
I still want to know what happens if he runs out.
Then he's no longer able to call in favors or pay for services. Not that that's so much of an issue right now because he's got a major price on his head. but yeah, in the first John Wick movie, it was all show don't tell. If you just watch the movie and you pay attention, you can put this stuff all together. It's not being blatantly obvious and beating you over the head with it, but they also didn't have that audience surrogate in there for John Wick or somebody to talk to explain it. And John Wick wouldn't have tolerated having somebody around that he would have had to explain all this shit to, because he's got a job to do.
I mean, yeah.
In Mad Max Fury Road was another case where they got in world building without having to go into too much detail with it.
It helps if you've seen the first 3 films.
Yes, but even then, Fury Road is one that stands... Well, all of them kind of are standalone in many respects, but Fury Road, you don't need to have seen any of the previous Mad Max movies, because they put enough context for things in there for you to piece it together.
Plus, Mel Gibson has gone on to say that Road Warrior should have been the first one.
But at any rate, the world building, they can do a whole lot more and show consequences of things a whole lot more than they can in a 2-hour movie.
Well, because I know that they have all of this stuff planned out. I know they have Rogue Squadron planned out. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering, did they say there was a movie or a TV series?
I don't remember. I think most of the titles that got announced are series. Maybe not necessarily ones that are going to be multi-season like The Mandalorian. They might be limited run. Or limited series, like the Book of Boba Fett is going to be.
Well, that one I already know is going to be a mini-series. I know the Ahsoka one is going to be
a limited series, yeah.
What was the... there was one that the Cara Dune character was supposed to be in...
Rangers of the New Republic.
Yeah, because I know that Jon Favreau made that specifically for the Cara Dune character, and then Disney goes and fires Gina Carano, to which that really pissed him off. To the point where I'm sure he's I don't want, because he already has everything done for that
planned
and
out and everything.
Yeah, and I think for season 3 of Mandalorian, he does not want to have to go do rewrites. Because he went through that once already with Iron Man 2. He's not doing it again.
Well, who knows what they're going to do about that? That's a later Star Wars series, but Bad Batch definitely fun.
Did you notice a slight change in the animation style?
I did. It definitely felt like it was something between Clone Wars and Rebels.
It looked like a lot of it was like. Granted, yes, it's still CGI, but it looked like it was painted.
Yeah, I definitely got that sort of.
Especially some of the stuff. Like, it's more noticeable. Like the scene where Omega was in the Bad Batch's room, and when she's like. I think it's like when she's like sifting through one of the crates or whatever, and you look in the background, it looks like some of the stuff that's in the background is like straight up painted on.
Well, I think they are doing that with with like backgrounds and stuff is meant to be paintings. Like in the last scene of Clone Wars, when Vader comes to find the wrecked ship and finds Ahsoka's lightsabers.
That he gave her.
Yep. The backdrop of that scene, with the wrecked ship and everything, is a painting. They have this. They have like the CG characters sort of in it, in a sense, but the background itself was like a painting. So I wouldn't be surprised if they are doing something like that, where it's like 2-dimensional backgrounds, but but with like CG sort of overlaid with it.
Because I really like the animation style that they did.
It did have that sort of sense, like the waterfall scene with Hunter and Caleb.
I was looking at that too.
But in that case, it was like a painting, but they then put like animation in, like an animated painting, sort of thing, because you had the waterfall and the mist and everything. But yeah, it's very, very pretty with what they're doing with the CG for these series right now.
It's like, hey, Pixar.
Pixar's like, you guys do your own thing. We're fine with what we're doing.
It's like, look at how we can animate water now.
And Pixar's just like, yeah, come to us when you need to figure out how to CG individual strands of hair, like they did for Violet in The Incredibles. Violet's hair broke their.
I thought Sully's was bad.
I mean, it's just in Sully's case, it's just like shorter fur, but having like Violet's hair with how long it was and the way it needed to flow and move and everything was a whole lot more complex. I've seen some of the outtakes of like the CG like rigs for her hair going crazy and her hair just going like around her head.
Oh, so it was like a bad video game glitch.
Yes, it was like her hair was glitching out like horribly. It's like, it's like the animation studio that handles the Star Wars stuff could go to Pixar and be like, look at us, we can animate water now too, and Pixar's just like, that's cute. Because when it comes to hair, they still have it more like clumps rather than like strands.
Yeah, but like I said, like a lot of the designs and stuff are still the same as what they were in Clone Wars and Rebels.
Yeah.
Because I know that Clone Wars, when it first came out, like it wasn't as refined.
Yeah.
But like over time, as you watch the show go on, and
you see that with a lot of animations, that over time the animation style and the art will evolve with time. To use Rooster Teeth's Ruby as an example, the earlier seasons were animated in Poser, and you can sort of tell in some cases, but then in later seasons they started using a different animation program. I don't remember off the top of my head what it was, but the animations, and the art style has evolved with it over time. The characters still have, still maintain their looks. They'll get like new outfits or something every now and then, but the style keeps improving. They're able to better animate things like Ruby's cape, sort of actually properly, flowing in a breeze rather than being sort of like a stiff board, like it is in some case, like it was in some of the earlier seasons. Heck, in season 1, the only characters that got any animation were named major characters. Any background characters were just like moving little shadow people.
Yeah, I remember that because I have the first volume.
And then starting in season 2, they got some better computers to help them with compiling all this stuff, and they were able to actually make unique individual characters in the background.
Another good example, South Park. If you go and you watch the very first episode of South Park, that was essentially made with like cutout paper and was essentially stop motion. And it was after that episode was made is when Matt and Trey both realized that they could make the show from then on with computers. And so it completely changed after that. And the way you can also tell is that if you go back and you watch the first episode, you'll notice that a lot of the characters have shadows behind them. When, like, let's say if there's a tree in the distance and the character is supposed to be like in the foreground, the character's shadow is like essentially like over the tree. But then after the first episode, you don't ever see that again.
Because it was probably just more work than it was.
Oh, yes. And they literally used that for an episode of South Park later on. It was one of their Christmas episodes where the kids were trying to animate a South Park, a special, that what they ended up doing was they just went and did the original short or one of the 2 shorts that Matt and Trey did when they were in college.
Yeah.
And it was also when they were trying to pass the show around, trying to say, hey, this is a show that we want to do. You're interested? Fox said no.
Well, and I'm sure they're kicking themselves now.
They probably would have canceled it at like season 3. But anyways,
after moving it around from weekday to weekday or weeknight to weeknight, like they did to Firefly
and family, maybe with children. But anyways, yeah. Bad Batch, great start.
Great start. We're both looking forward to seeing where this goes.
So, which Star Wars character from like the Clone Wars era or Rebels era would you like to see?
Well, I've already sort of stated that I kind of want to see if Hondo will. Apart from him.
Yeah, like Jedi characters, Sith characters. Do you want to see Vader pop up at some point?
Vader popping up would be interesting, but he's like an end game sort of character. Like he wouldn't show up until like the very last episode.
Yeah, but you feel like Tarkin would be the main villain for this one.
Oh yeah, villain. Yeah, Tarkin is unquestionably the main big bad for this. If Vader turns up, it's going to be the Bad Batch are fucked. If Vader shows up, I don't care how good the Bad Batch is. We've seen what Vader does when he's not just chilling on Mustafar, trying to get healed up.
I was thinking Director Krennic could appear.
Director Krennic would be an interesting one.
I mean, they could get his actor back to come in and voice him.
Yeah, I forget the actor's name now off the top of my head.
He was in Ready Player One.
Yeah, and he was in Captain Marvel.
Yeah, where he used his natural accent in that one.
Only when he was not being his human disguise.
Yeah.
It was when Talos was like being just Skrull Talos is when he was using his natural accent, which I thought was a nice touch.
Yeah, it was.
I don't remember if any of the other Skrull used that accent as well.
No, it was just him.
That's a shame. You could have just gone with that, rolled with that, taught some of the others how to say some of their lines with that sort of accent, and make that just be a Skrull thing.
But
anyway,
I'm trying to think of some other, like, definitely get some Mandalorians in it, like, since the Mandalorians were allies to the clones during the Clone Wars.
Yeah, although I'm sure Mandalore is dealing with its own issues right now.
Yeah, like the fallout with Darth Maul.
What if Mandalore gets involved in this? Could we see the Great Purge?
We could see it.
But that strikes me as the sort of thing that they would want to save somewhat more for the Mandalorian, like some flashback.
But do you want to see it from the Bad Batch's point of view?
I don't know. It would be interesting if we do get to see a glimpse of it, or maybe even hear about it. It's like, we can't go to Mandalore. Why not? It's not there anymore. They glassed it. Or whatever they did to Mandalore that made it like a no-go zone. But then again, we don't know if the planet actually was severely devastated like that, or if that's just a lie that the Children of the Watch told their foundlings.
Who knows?
It's one of those things I'd have to go back and check again to see if was it only Mando that was explaining why Mandalore was like cursed, was you can't go there sort of thing, or if it was from somebody else. Because if it was from Mando, he's not been given the whole story.
Yeah, I mean, I know he was rather young when there was the droids who showed up.
Yep, it was Separatist, the super battle droids.
Which was actually really cool to see those live action again.
Yeah.
With better CGI, too. Oh yeah, that's another thing. I really wish they would go back and touch up the CGI in the prequel movies. It's
probably more trouble than it's worth, and if you're going to go back and touch up things in the prequel trilogy, there's a whole lot more besides just bad CG that you could touch up.
Well, it'd be a start.
Story.
It'd be a start.
Character development.
But, yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to Friday now.
Oh, yeah.
So is this every Friday for...
I believe every Friday. Episode 1 only dropped on Tuesday because it was May the 4th. Star Wars Day.
Yes, Star Trek has April 5th. First Contact Day.
First Contact Day.
May 4th is Star Wars Day.
This is the May. Yeah.
But I feel like they should also post something on the 5th also. Revenge of the 5th.
Nope.
No, Revenge of the 6th.
Yes, because you have May the 4th, then you have Cinco de Mayo, but after that comes the Revenge of the 6th.
So, yeah.
Bad Batch, definitely a good start. We're both looking forward to seeing where this goes.
Oh, yes, and I'm hoping that it lasts, hopefully, as long as what Clone Wars did. The show, not the actual war itself.
Yes. I don't know, unfortunately, off the top of my head, how many episodes Season 1 is supposed to be. But, honestly, I feel like Bad Batch should be a limited series, like Ahsoka is going to be, like Book of Boba Fett is going to be, because... This seems like it's not one you could really string out for too long, because there's only so much time you can. There's only so long you can have this sort of play itself out, and then not have the Bad Batch turn up again in like the time of Rebels or something. But yeah, so we're looking forward to Fridays going forward, so we can keep bringing you more editions of the Mandocast as we watch the Bad Batch. But I think that about wraps it up for today. So, for Chris, I am Jay, and we will see you next time.
Thanks for listening to Aboard to Death Mandocast. Be sure to check out all the Star Wars content on Disney Plus and give us a like and subscribe. This is the way.